So even our bodies, being the machines they are, they have to be maintained. But we can't imagine a body that doesn't die. The atomic structure is so far superior that it's imperishable. And that's a place we want to go. Never a dull moment. Can you imagine blissed out all the time? That's what we want. We do. You want any pain? You want any suffering? I mean, who could say it's go? Well, some people will argue, oh, you need the evil, or else you wouldn't know the difference between good and evil. And they say you got to have the contrast, or else you wouldn't have the benefit of knowing the difference. So there's all these arguments to dispute why they don't want to go to a better world and cop out. Is it really? It's a cop out. It's just saying, hey, you know what? Why bother trying if that's not a better place anyhow? Because there's no contrast. We need the evil in order to know the difference between evil and good. And so you can understand that. But that's not the contrast we need. We need the paradigm of yin yang, perhaps, male female. That's the big difference. The opposites attracting, like a magnet. Okay, they attract. That is what we need. We don't need evil, okay, in order to have good. That would be their argument, and that's wholly illogical on its face. In order to have good, well, evil gave birth to good. I mean, that's the stupidest thing in the world. So you've got to want to live forever in a world that is good, down to the smallest detail. And we all have the capacity to imagine that world, the potential to imagine a place like that. And we've got to admit that, talk it over with God. I mean, we're all equally beloved, okay? Now, the reason I'm always talking about economics and its involvement in these spiritual matters is because it's there. It's a constant downer. It's a drain on our attention and our affections. And it screws with our right values. And it can really be a very serious bummer, Really it is. The death and destruction and the misery it causes is untold. I mean, when you know that you've got wars for profit, does it get worse than that? When innocent men, women, and children are being slaughtered because somebody will do something for money. We know there's soldiers of fortune, right? Mercenaries out there that for the right price, these are hired hitmen, executioners. That's the world we live in. How is that okay? How is that God's will being done? How is that the Lord's Prayer being fulfilled on earth as it is in heaven? It's not. And that's just one example. I mean, see how the problems get worse and how it's an anathema. It's a bad thing to solve the problems. And the key problem they've got to keep intact is desperate poverty, because this drives so many of the problems out there that give this element of chaos that's necessary, and it gives relevance to the evildoers, and it lets them get away with imposing the death and destruction on the people. And they just love their lives in this world. They love being on top of this heap, at the top of the pyramid of power. These grand puppeteers, the masterminds, the kingpins, they're sick. These are madmen. And that's who is really setting the values of this world and the trend. This is it. So you understand how you've really got to make a concerted effort. You've got to seek diligently for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to ever find it, because it's so murky. The waters are so muddied. So in order to come out of Babylon, you've got to really, really want it. You've got to really, really say, I want to get it, man. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to go to hell. I certainly don't want to end up with those hypocrites that have the wrong values, that have a huge advantage because they don't value conscience and integrity, honor, reputation, and soul. They think those things are foolish. So you understand how serious this matter is to get across to people, and how this is what we're called on to explain to the people that are perishing, that don't know it. They're unintentionally on the highway to hell, inadvertently, that they're lost in space. Their values are screwed up. They're giving their affections and attentions to the wrong entity. And that's this worldly beast system, the established system, which is run entirely, it's all about money, and who can deny that? It's horrendous. And we've got to get it. And the crime, most of the crime is driven by desperate poverty. The social welfare industry is set up, and the recipients get blamed for being stupid or lazy, just freeloaders and all this, when really that's like blaming the effect, that the problems are created deliberately in order for these evildoers to be relevant. You understand? They need the chaos. They need problems, overwhelming crises after another, and they need to point the finger to get divert the blame away from them. You don't want to focus on the kingpins, right? So, they cause all these problems that would disappear if you just ended desperate poverty. And is it God's will that we have desperate poverty? Whose planet is this anyhow? It belongs to you. It's God's planet, so he gives it to his children. So we have a right to share in the inherent wealth and the resources of the planet. Do you understand? So it's not a political thing. It's not a communist, socialist, capitalist thing. It just, it shuts everybody up. But if we had true capitalism, which is an anathema to the evildoers, eventually it would create a rising tide of prosperity that would lift everybody's ship. We'd all be rich, in other words, gradually, eventually. But yet capitalism gets blamed, right? So they're defaming capitalism on purpose because they know what would happen, and they don't want that to happen. They don't want the captives to be set free. The evildoers don't. So they frame capitalism, and really what they're into is fascism that they'll call capitalism. It's really, at best, crony capitalism, which has the opposite effect of true capitalism. It creates a wealth imbalance. It creates poverty. And there you go. The crime stays high, and it gives all these jobs then revolve around the problems in the criminal industrial complex. You understand? Those jobs would disappear virtually overnight if you just ended desperate poverty. You understand how easy it would be? The system wouldn't break down if everybody was born rich. Prove it. You got to prove that to me. That can't be speculation and conjecture in your own theory. You prove it. Show me a time in history when that was the case, when we really had a level playing field from birth. Okay, when we were all handed our share of the planet's resources from birth, and we're just all passing through. None of us can keep it anyhow. You understand? So it's all there. It's a pie that exists that we can just dip into anytime we want. That would be our reality. So we all serve because we have an instinct, God-given instinct, to not want to squander our talents. That we want to be useful. We want to be appreciated. We want to serve. King Solomon said this is where we're going to derive the greatest gratification and satisfaction from life, is by serving, by the sweat of our brow. Not going to be by being lazy and decadent. No, that at the end of your days, you're going to be very happy that you went out and you used your God-given hands and talents and served your fellow man, and you were appreciated. Okay, it's your instinct, God-like instinct we have. So we don't ever have to worry that we're all born rich and the system's going to break down. It's not going to happen, yet that's what kind of thing we're told. We got this national debt. You see how all this stuff ties into spirituality and God's will for us and the stumbling blocks to God's will being fulfilled on earth, and how it's a it's a monster of it's a behemoth that we're up against here. We're in a lot of trouble. We're in it deep, and we need God's help to extricate us from this mess. We've got to let other people know these truths and help them to understand, hey, you could be deluded, you could be deceived, you could be on the path to destruction and not even know it. It's easy because you've been trained thusly on the mainstream media and in the colleges and universities that, the right values are worldly values. The definition of success is what we tell you it is. And it's all about money, amassing a great fortune. This is what going out and getting a great education is all about. You may not really care about what you learned. Okay, you may or may not. But at the end of the day, as long as you make gobs of dough, then you are a success and you did the right thing. You did the practical thing, the pragmatic thing, the thing that shows you have common sense. So do you see the departure between true reality and pseudo-reality? I want you to. And then you could go out and enlighten other people. You could be very clear-minded, out of Babylon. God wants you to have those things. You can clear that muddy water away and say, know what? You know what? The whole world may, if they want to choose to keep living and swimming in muddy, dirty, filthy water, that's their prerogative. But I'm going to help if I can to convince them that no, it's much better over here to have the right values, to swim in clear, clean water, to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and be empowered with it, and to give that power away, and understand that being selfish entails that. Being selfish entails that we be ultimately very